Hello, welcome to the Royal Road School of Carmelite Prayer. We're continuing on with the Way of Perfection today. We're in part 5, which is a commentary written by St. Teresa on the Our Father. Today we're going to be focusing on chapter 28, which explains the nature of the prayer of recollection and sets down some ways of getting accustomed to this form of prayer. Please note that both chapter 28 and 29 are addressing the prayer of recollection. Consider what your Master says, who art in heaven. Do you think it is of little importance to know what heaven is and where to seek your Father? For wandering minds, it is very important not only to believe these truths, but to strive to understand them by experience. Doing this is one of the ways of greatly slowing down the mind and recollecting the soul. You already know that God is everywhere, and wherever God is, there is heaven. Consider what St. Augustine says, that he sought him in many places, but ultimately found him within himself. Do you think it matters little for a soul with a wandering mind to understand this truth and see that there is no need to go to heaven in order to speak with one's eternal Father or find delight in him? Nor is there any need to shout, however softly we speak. He is near enough to hear us. All one need do is go into solitude and look at him within oneself, and not turn away from so good a guest. With great humility, speak to him as a father. Beseech him as you would a father. Tell him about your trials. Ask him for a remedy against them, realizing that you are not worthy to be his daughter. Humility doesn't consist in refusing a favor to the king's offer, but in accepting it and being delighted with it. I have the Emperor of heaven and earth in my house, and out of humility, I do not want to take what he gives me, but leave him alone. Or, while he is begging me to ask him for something, I do not do so. I even let him go. He sees that I never finish trying to make up my mind. Have nothing to do with this kind of humility, but speak with him as with a father, or with a brother, or a lord, or as with a spouse, sometimes in one way, sometimes in another. He will teach you what you must do to please him. He is your spouse. He will treat you accordingly. It is well worthwhile for you to have understood this truth. The Lord is within us. It is there we must be with him. The intellect is recollected much more quickly with this kind of prayer. It's a prayer that brings with it many blessings. This prayer is called recollection because the soul collects its faculties together and enters within itself to be with its God. Its divine master comes more quickly to teach it and to give it the prayer of quiet than he would through any other method. Centered there within itself, it can think about the Passion, represent the Son, offer him to the Father, and not tire the intellect by going to look for him on Mount Calvary or in the garden, or at the pillar. Those who can enclose themselves within this little heaven of our soul, where the Maker of heaven and earth is present, and then grow accustomed to refusing the distraction of exterior senses, should believe they are following an excellent path. They will not fail to drink from the fount. They will journey far in a short time. Their situation is like a person who travels by ship. With a little wind, he reaches the end of his journey in a few days. Those who go by land, however, take longer. It's the path of heaven. I say of heaven because they are in the palace of the King. They are not on earth and are more secure. Those who know how to recollect themselves are already out to sea. They are maybe not completely away from land, but they strive to get free from land by recollecting their senses within. If the recollection is true, it is felt clearly because it produces an effect in the soul. It is like one who enters a fortified castle to be safe from enemies. There is a withdrawing of the senses. The eyes close so that the sight might be more awake to things of the soul. Anyone who walks this path keeps his eyes closed when he prays, to not look at things on earth. This striving comes at the beginning. Later, there is no need to strive. There are greater and lesser degrees of recollection. And if we make the effort, practice this recollection for some days, and get used to it, the gain will be clearly seen. We will understand when beginning to pray that the bees are approaching and entering the beehive to make honey. This recollection will happen without our effort. The faculties are drawn inward. When the soul does no more than give a sign that it wishes to be recollected, the senses obey it and become recollected. Though they go back out again, they go out as captives. When the will calls them back, they come more quickly, until after many entries, the Lord wills that they rest entirely in perfect contemplation. Those who know how to recollect themselves are like those who travel by sea. Since it is important not to proceed slowly, let us speak about how to get accustomed to such a good method. The fire of divine love is more quickly enkindled when they blow a little with their intellects. Since they are close to the fire, a little spark will ignite and set all ablaze. The soul is alone with its God and well prepared for this enkindling. I would like you to clearly understand this manner of prayer, which is called recollection. So let us imagine that within us is an extremely rich palace built entirely of gold and precious stones. Imagine, too, that you have a part to play for this palace to be so beautiful. There is no edifice as beautiful as a soul pure and full of virtues. The greater the virtues, the more magnificent the jewels. Imagine also that this mighty King, your Father, dwells in this palace. He is seated upon an extremely valuable throne, your heart. It is important to truly understand that within us lies something incomparably more precious than what we see outside ourselves. I consider it impossible to pay much attention to worldly things if we were to remember we have a guest such as this within us. I understood that I had a soul, but what the soul deserved and who dwelt within it, I did not understand, because I had covered my eyes with the vanities of the world. If I had understood as I do now, that in this little palace of my soul dwelt so great a king, I would not have left him alone so often. I would have remained with him more often and striven not to be so unclean. That he who would fill 1,000 worlds would enclose himself in something so small. And so he wanted to enclose himself in the womb of his most blessed mother. But as Lord, he is free to do what he wants. And since he loves us, he adapts himself to our size. The Lord enlarges the soul little by little, and it has the capacity to receive what he will place within it. And he has the power to enlarge this palace. The point is that we should give ourselves to him with complete determination. We should strive to empty the soul so that he can add or take away from it as if it were his own property. So let us not oppose him. He doesn't force our will. He takes what we give him. He doesn't give himself completely until we give ourselves completely. He never works in a soul as he does when it is totally his with no obstacle. Now then, if we fill the palace with lowly people and trifles, how will there be room for the Lord with his court? Do you think, daughters, that he comes alone? Don't you see that his Son says, "Who art in heaven"? Since he is king, his court attendants would never leave him alone. They will always be with him. They beseech him on our behalf, since they are full of charity. Don't think that things in heaven are like they are here on earth. If here below a lord favors someone, the envy of others is immediately stirred, and that poor person is hated without having done anything against him. Amen. This is the end of the first part of the Prayer of Recollection, chapter 28. Chapter 29 continues with Teresa speaking to us about the Prayer of Recollection.